August 12, 1939. America's fastest, most luxurious train, the city of San Francisco, was slicing through Nevada at 60 miles per hour. Sleek, articulated cars held movie stars, politicians, and ordinary families. Then, in a remote canyon, the impossible happened. A 4-inch shift in solid steel sent everything off the rails. The official story called it sabotage, but the real details, hidden tools, painted evidence, no fingerprints, point to precision. No ordinary vandal could manage. 24 lives ended in a single crash, and the FBI never caught the one person who knew exactly how to do it. What kind of mind and what motive could turn a marvel of engineering into a perfect crime? The city of San Francisco was never just a train. In the late 1930s, it was a national obsession. A silver bullet stretching nearly a quarter mile, its polished aluminum gleaming under the desert sun. Union Pacific, Southern Pacific, and Chicago and Northwestern joined forces to create it, each competing for a piece of the future. Their posters promised a new kind of travel, Chicago to San Francisco in just 39 hours, while gliding across the continent at speeds that made headlines. Inside, the experience matched the hype. Air conditioning cooled the Art Deco lounges. Stewardesses trained as nurses moved between compartments with practiced calm. The dining car known as Mission Dolores served prime rib on white linen while the landscape blurred past at 90 miles an hour. Even the names of the cars, Presidio, Twin Peaks, Chinatown, hinted at a journey tailored for the nation's elite. Movie stars booked entire compartments. Politicians and business tycoons sealed deals over cocktails in the lounge. For ordinary families, a ticket meant a brush with the extraordinary, a chance to move as fast as the modern world itself. Magazine covers called it the flagship of American progress. Brochures boasted of its articulated design, where cars shared wheels for a smoother, faster ride. Every detail was engineered to inspire awe. The city of San Francisco was not just a way to cross the country, it was a rolling promise that technology could conquer distance, danger, and even fate. In an era hungry for optimism, the Streamliner became a symbol of everything that was supposed to be unbreakable. Beneath the polished surface, the city of San Francisco was a marvel of engineering. Each car was built from lightweight aluminum, polished to a mirror sheen, but strong enough for the demands of high-speed travel. What set this train apart was not just the metal or the speed, it was how the cars were joined. Instead of each car riding alone, they were articulated, sharing trucks, the wheel assemblies between them. This design meant fewer wheels, less weight, and a ride so smooth passengers could balance a glass of water at 90 miles an hour. The articulated system also allowed the train to snake through tight curves at speed, its cars flexing together like the links of a chain. At full length, the Streamliner stretched nearly a quarter mile, a single, unbroken ribbon of steel and aluminum. Power came from a row of diesel-electric locomotives at the front, each one a product of the new machine age. Together, these engines delivered over 5,400 horsepower, enough to keep the train on a strict 39-hour schedule from Chicago to the Pacific coast. The diesels were the pride of the railroad shops, sleek, reliable, and far cleaner than the old coal burners. With their humming generators and electric traction motors, they turned raw fuel into speed, pushing the articulated cars across deserts, mountains, and river canyons in record time. But the same engineering that promised safety and luxury also created a hidden vulnerability. The shared truck design meant the cars depended on each other for stability. If one car left the rails, the next would follow, linked by the very system that made the ride so smooth. The entire train's fate could hinge on a few inches of steel, 4 inches to be exact. The margin between triumph and disaster, waiting in the dark ahead. Moving a rail is not a job for the impatient or the weak. On the night of August 12, 1939, someone arrived at bridge number 4 with a plan and the tools to carry it out. The rail in question weighed 1,500 pounds, a solid steel bar 39 feet long, anchored by spikes driven deep into the wooden ties. To shift it, the saboteur would first need to extract the spikes from at least 10 or 12 ties, each spike hammered in with thousands of pounds of force. A claw bar 6 feet long, made of tempered steel and curved for maximum leverage, became the instrument of choice. It would take muscle, patience, and a practiced hand to work the bar under each spike, rock it loose, and pull it free, one by one, without drawing attention. Once the spikes were out, the real test began. The rail had to be pried sideways, against its own weight and the friction of the ties. Calculations from later reenactments showed it would take upwards of 500 pounds of pull at the end of a claw bar to budge the rail even an inch. But the saboteur did not need inches, just 4 inches. 4 inches was enough to break the track's perfect geometry, enough to turn a safe curve into a death trap. The misalignment was not haphazard. The rail was shifted inward, toward the center of the gauge, then respiked into fresh holes, holding it in its new, deadly position. The angle bars at the joint were loosened, bolts backed off just enough to allow the rail to flex, but not enough to betray the sabotage to a casual glance. This was not the work of vandals or thrill-seekers. The tools were handled with the confidence of someone who knew the track, someone who might have spent years walking these rails, maintaining them, or learning how to break them. The force required, the sequence of steps, even the timing all pointed to a mind that understood both the physics of steel and the schedule of trains. In the darkness, the saboteur finished the job, leaving the rail in place, shifted just 4 inches off true. The trap was set. The streamliner was already on its way. The Humboldt River Canyon does not give up secrets easily. Bridge number 4 sits in a narrow throat of rock and sage, boxed in by steep walls and the hiss of the river below. At night, the only company is the wind and the distant click of metal shoes on gravel. That isolation is what the saboteur counted on. No houses, no headlights, no patrols, just darkness and time. The Southern Pacific freight had cleared the canyon just after 6 in the evening. That left a window, 3 hours, give or take, before the city of San Francisco was due. Enough time to work, but not enough to linger. Every move had to be silent, every trace covered. The saboteur pulled the spikes, shifted the rail inward by 4 inches, and then reached for a can of brown paint. Not railroad red or maintenance orange, but brown to blend with the dust and ballast. The rail, the angle bars, even the claw bar itself were brushed until the metal faded into the earth. Under a train headlight, nothing would glint. Tumbleweeds were dragged over the gouged ties and loose dirt. Tool marks were buried under a thin layer of gravel. Even the footprints were pressed into the soft ballast, then swept away with a branch. The work was precise, the camouflage almost ritualistic. It was not just about hiding from railroad inspectors. It was about making the trap invisible, even to someone who knew what to look for. The saboteur had studied the timetable. He knew when the last train had passed and when the next one would come. He knew the canyon would swallow up any sound. By the time he finished, the only sign anything had changed was the faint smell of fresh paint on cooling steel. The trap was set, and the streamliner was already racing west, its passengers unaware that the desert night had become an accomplice. At 9:33 p.m., the city of San Francisco thundered into Humboldt River Canyon, moving 60 miles an hour. The headlights swept over the curve, the steel bridge looming ahead. Then the locomotive hit the gap. 4 inches of missing gauge, invisible in the dark, was all it took. The front wheels dropped between the rails, but the train was not slowing down. Instead of plunging off the track, the lead diesel locomotives vaulted the gap, their massive weight and speed carrying them over like a stone skipping water. For a split second, the engine slid along the ties, sparks flying from steel on wood. Then, against every rule of physics and luck, the locomotives climbed back onto the rails on the far side of the bridge. That momentum, the very thing that made the streamliner an engineering marvel, became both salvation and curse. The engine crew survived, battered but alive, cocooned in the front cab as the world behind them unraveled. The articulated cars, chained together by shared trucks, had no chance. When the lead engines jumped the gap, the cars behind were yanked sideways, their wheels dropping into the void left by the shifted rail. Each car twisted, the connections turning one derailment into a chain reaction. The bridge's steel girder weighted like a blade. In that instant, the train's design, its speed, and 4 inches of sabotage collided. The miracle at the front became carnage at the rear. The carnage began the moment the articulated cars left the rails. The shared trucks that once delivered a ride as smooth as glass now became shackles. As the first car derailed, its momentum dragged the next with it, each one twisting against the iron geometry of the bridge. The lightweight aluminum bodies, engineered for speed, proved no match for the steel truss. Girders sliced through the cars, peeling open their sides and roofs as if they were nothing more than tin. Compartments that had, minutes earlier, held families and sleeping travelers were torn apart in a matter of seconds. The force of the impact telescoped entire cars. One rammed inside the next, their frames folding like paper. Some plunged into the Humboldt River below, others crumpled against the embankment. The destruction was total. Rescue crews would later find the kitchen car Presidio wrapped around a bridge upright, its coffee urns embedded in twisted metal. The diner Mission Dolores was split open, its white tablecloths stained and scattered among the wreckage. In the darkness, the only witness was a hobo camped near the riverbank. He described a sound that did not belong to any machine, a roar like a mountain falling. That single phrase captured the violence unleashed by 4 inches of sabotage and a quarter-mile of chained steel. The echo of that night lingered in the canyon long after the fires were out, leaving behind a scene that was less a train wreck and more a forensic puzzle. Every torn panel, every broken coupling, would become evidence in the search for a killer. The investigation began before dawn, with the canyon still echoing from the night's violence. Southern Pacific detectives and FBI agents moved through the wreckage, cataloging every trace left behind. The first exhibit was a claw bar, 6 feet of steel, its handle streaked with fresh brown paint. The tool had been tossed into the shallow water below the bridge, as if its owner hoped the current would carry it away. But the river was slow, and the bar settled among the rocks, waiting to be found by divers. When it was pulled from the water, the paint was still tacky to the touch, wet paint. That detail would haunt the case. Whoever used it had worked quickly, finishing the camouflage only hours before the crash. Close by, investigators logged a canvas jacket snagged on the brush near the embankment. The lining was damp and the pockets were empty. No name stitched inside, no identifying marks. It was the kind of coat worn by section hands and drifters alike, common enough to mean nothing but too deliberate to ignore. Next came the footprints, pressed deep in the ballast between the ties. They measured out a slow, methodical path along the rails, each one a silent signature. The prints were large, the tread worn, suggesting heavy boots and a man used to walking track. Photographers documented every scrap of evidence, their flashbulbs freezing the scene for the official record. Chain of custody logs began to fill with item numbers and locations, each entry a potential clue. The wet paint, the abandoned tool, the solitary jacket, and the footprints together formed a forensic puzzle. The facts were concrete, the proof undeniable. But for all their certainty, none of these exhibits pointed to a name. The saboteur had left his tools behind, but not his identity. The search for a name began with the evidence, but it quickly turned to the people who knew these rails best. Bob Ernest became the most talked about suspect almost overnight. He was a section hand, one of the men who walked the track for a living, checking for loose spikes and split ties. Ernest had a reputation for strength and a temper that sometimes flared at his supervisors. Days before the crash, he had argued with his boss about overtime and layoffs. The railroad's own files note he had the skill to move a rail, the access to tools, and the kind of grudges that can fester in the dark. Detectives tracked him down, grilled him for hours, and checked his alibi. But nothing stuck. No fingerprints on the claw bar, no paint on his hands, no witness who could place him in the canyon that night. In the end, Bob Ernest was just another name in a thick folder marked "No Prosecution." The rumors did not stop with labor disputes. In 1939, the shadow of war hung over Europe, and the American press was quick to whisper about foreign agents. Some called it the work of a German saboteur, sent to test how easy it would be to cripple the country's arteries before the world caught fire. The FBI followed up every lead. They chased transients, strangers in town, men with accents buying tools at the hardware store. They found nothing but dead ends. No foreign fingerprints, no coded messages, no confession in the files. The reward money, $10,000, a fortune in the Depression, brought out tipsters and cranks, but no answers. The case file thickened with interviews and rumors, but the real saboteur remained a phantom, lost somewhere between the facts and the fear. Today, every train crossing Bridge Number 4 still relies on human trust. There is no perfect safeguard against sabotage. The 4-inch gap that killed 24 people remains an open wound in forensic engineering, a reminder that our most advanced systems can still be undone by intent and knowledge. As rail networks expand and threats evolve, the mystery endures. How much security is ever truly enough? Share your thoughts below.